Imagine walking into a bank, ready to deposit a life-changing sum of money, only to be greeted with doubt and disrespect. That's exactly what happened when a wealthy black entrepreneur stepped into a prestigious bank, only to be met by a manager who couldn't see past his own prejudice. This wasn't just any customer. It was a man who had worked tirelessly to build his empire, yet here he was, being questioned and humiliated simply because of his appearance. The manager's tone dripped with condescension as he dismissed the man's request, clearly underestimating who he was dealing with. What happened next left the entire bank staff and customers in shock, as the truth about this millionaire's identity came to light in the most unexpected way. How will this story unfold? Stick around as we dive into this jaw-dropping encounter of judgment, power, and a lesson in humility. The millionaire stood there, holding a briefcase containing documents and checks worth more than most people could imagine. Yet, instead of being treated with respect, he was met with skepticism. The manager, a stern-looking man in a tailored suit, crossed his arms and gave the entrepreneur a cold, dismissive glance. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" he asked, his tone laced with disbelief. The millionaire remained calm, but inside, frustration simmered. He had spent years building his wealth through hard work and smart decisions, but moments like this reminded him of the barriers that still existed. The other customers in the bank began to notice the tension, some whispering to each other, while the staff glanced nervously at the manager. Still, the entrepreneur stayed composed, determined not to let the manager's attitude get the better of him. Little did the manager know, this encounter was about to take an unforgettable turn. The manager's dismissive attitude only grew stronger as he stared at the man, clearly doubting his story. "We have policies for deposits like these," he said sharply, pointing to the briefcase. "I'll need to see some proof that you even have the funds you're claiming." The millionaire calmly opened the briefcase, revealing not just checks and financial documents, but also business contracts and awards that spoke to his success. The room fell silent for a moment as the impressive contents came into view, but the manager's expression didn't soften. Instead, he scoffed, "Anyone can fake papers like these." Meanwhile, a young teller nearby watched the exchange with growing unease. She recognized the man from an article she had read about a groundbreaking real estate deal in the city. Her curiosity piqued, but she hesitated to step in, intimidated by the manager's authority. Unfazed by the hostility, the millionaire leaned forward slightly, his calm voice steady but firm. "Are you always this unprofessional with your customers, or is it just me?" His words caught the attention of everyone in the bank, including the security guard at the door, who began watching more closely. What no one realized yet was that the millionaire wasn't just any businessman. He had connections and influence that would soon come to light in ways no one could have anticipated. The manager's smirk widened as he dismissed the millionaire's calm demeanor as arrogance. "You're wasting everyone's time," he said, motioning for a security guard to step closer. The tension in the room thickened, and the millionaire's calm exterior began to show cracks of irritation. Customers and employees watched, some visibly uncomfortable, others whispering in disbelief. The young teller couldn't stay silent any longer. Gathering her courage, she approached the manager. "Sir, I think you should take another look," she said quietly, pointing to one of the documents in the briefcase. "This man is—" She stopped mid-sentence as the manager glared at her. "Stay out of this," he snapped. But her words had already planted seeds of doubt in the minds of the onlookers. The millionaire took a deep breath, clearly weighing his options. Then, with deliberate precision, he pulled out a sleek card from his wallet and handed it to the manager. The man's confidence faltered as he glanced at the card. His face went pale, his mouth opening slightly as if to speak, but no words came out. The bank fell into an uneasy silence, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioning. All eyes were now on the manager, whose expression shifted from smugness to panic. The card in his hand held the key to a truth he wasn't prepared for, a truth that would soon turn this entire encounter upside down. The manager's hands trembled slightly as he read the card, his eyes darting back to the millionaire. The bold title beneath the name left no room for misinterpretation. This man was a high-profile investor with ties to some of the largest companies in the country. A murmur spread through the bank as people noticed the shift in the manager's demeanor. But just as he opened his mouth to stammer an apology, the millionaire raised a hand to stop him. "I gave you every chance to handle this professionally," he said, his voice calm but cutting. "But instead, you chose to judge me before even listening. Now, you've created a bigger problem than you realize." The weight of his words hung in the air, and the manager's face turned ashen. Before anyone could react further, the bank's regional director walked in, having been alerted to the situation. She took one look at the scene and immediately recognized the millionaire. "Mr. Harris," she greeted him with a warm smile, clearly caught off guard by his presence. Turning to the manager, her expression hardened. "What's going on here?" The manager fumbled for words, trying to spin the encounter in his favor. But as he stuttered, the young teller stepped forward. "He refused to process Mr. Harris' deposit and questioned his legitimacy," she said plainly, her voice steady despite the tension. The regional director's eyes narrowed as she turned to the millionaire. "Mr. Harris, I deeply apologize for this treatment," she began, but he interrupted her with a raised eyebrow. "It's not just an apology I'm after," he said, glancing pointedly at the manager. The room braced for what was coming next. The regional director's face turned stern as she addressed the manager. "You've put this bank's reputation at risk with your actions," she said sharply. The manager, now visibly sweating, stumbled over his words. "I didn't know who he was. It was a misunderstanding," he blurted out. The millionaire, standing tall and composed, let out a small laugh. "A misunderstanding," he repeated. "It seems to me your assumptions clouded your judgment, and that's something no apology can fix." The room grew tense as Mr. Harris turned his attention to the regional director. "You should know that I've been considering a significant partnership with this bank. I was ready to bring millions in investments here, but after today, I'm not so sure." Gasps rippled through the staff and customers as the weight of his words sank in. The director's expression shifted to alarm. "Mr. Harris, please," she pleaded. "This does not reflect the values of our organization. Let me make this right." Before she could say more, Mr. Harris held up a hand. "Actually, I've already decided how this ends," he said. Turning to the young teller, he smiled. "You showed courage today, and that tells me you're a leader. How would you feel about working directly with me on future projects?" The teller's eyes widened in shock, and the manager's face turned a deep shade of red. You can't just poach my staff," he stammered, but his protests fell on deaf ears. As Mr. Harris walked toward the exit, the room was left in stunned silence. Before leaving, he glanced back at the regional director. "You should thank her," he said, nodding toward the teller. "She's the only reason I'm reconsidering walking away entirely." And with that, he disappeared through the door, leaving a legacy of lessons in his wake. The bank was left in stunned silence as Mr. Harris exited, his presence lingering like a storm that had just passed. The regional director turned to the manager, her expression cold. "We'll discuss your future here later," she said curtly, before addressing the young teller. "Thank you for stepping up. People like you are what this bank needs." The manager slumped into his chair, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. Meanwhile, the teller was still processing what had just happened. She couldn't believe that one act of courage had not only caught Mr. Harris' attention, but possibly opened doors she had never dreamed of. For the customers and staff who witnessed the encounter, it was a stark reminder of how dangerous assumptions can be. As word spread about what had happened, the incident became a story of humility, courage, and how one person's character can change everything.